doable. Is an ecologically sound Earth compatible with 8 billion people living healthy, dignified lives, chasing their full human potential? Or is this just another fantasy component of Star Trek, like warp drive and teleportation?
We're going to exhaust every option until we finally get clear that actually what matters is making clean energy cheap, so that we can live in a world where we mostly live in cities, we have high-intensive agriculture, we've got clean energy, we've got clean water, we've got recycling your materials. That's a vision of a world where we can all live modern lives, and it does not require any science fiction. Human beings have done amazingly well over the last half century. In 1950, there were just 2.5 billion people on Earth. Today, there's more than 7 billion of us. Everywhere infant mortality has been going down, and almost everywhere people are living longer lives. Unfortunately, all of our success has come at a high cost to the natural world. The number of wild animals on planet Earth has declined by half since 1970. It seems like we're always using nature in some ways, but humans save nature by not using it. It's the part of the Earth that we don't use that we leave to wild nature. Humans use about half of the Earth, half of the land surface of the Earth, the part of the Earth that's not underwater or under glaciers. Of that half, about half of the human impact is meat, or 24% of the Earth's surface. Another 10% is crops. Another 9% or so is for wood production. And this is really amazing. 3% of the Earth's surface we use for cities and suburbs, for the places that we live. And what's important about that is that now half of all humans, 3.5 billion of us, live in cities and suburbs. And this is going to prove to be a crucial part of how negative impact will peak and decline this century. If we take the right actions today, the overall size of the human population and our overall negative impact on the natural world could peak and decline, not by the end of the century, but within a few decades. Many of you know that whaling was a huge industry in the early 1800s. Mostly we hunted whales for their oil. We used their oil as energy to light up our lamps. Grand ball given by the whales in honor of the discovery of oil wells in Pennsylvania. We save nature by not using it. We saved nature by not needing it. We didn't need the whales anymore. We had a better substitute. It was kerosene made from abundant and cheap petroleum. And we didn't save the whales by using whales more sustainably. We didn't save the whales by having more efficient lighting to burn the whale oil more efficiently. We saved the whales by not hunting them. This is New England in 1880. There was only 30% of it forested at that time. Most of the rest was farmland. This is New England today, 80% forested. Martha's Vineyard was really a large sheep farm in 1900. Today, it's mostly forested. The forests are growing back. Why? Farms went bankrupt. We mostly didn't need them for their land anymore. We became more efficient at growing more food. We grew more food on less land. We saved all of that nature, allowing the forest to grow back because we didn't need it. But what about poor countries? What about developing countries? What about all the slums? And we're talking about industrialization, about factories where the conditions are terrible and people are treated miserably. That was certainly my view. 20 years ago, I was involved in an effort to hold Nike and other corporations accountable for their labor practices in other countries, particularly in Indonesia. It was a successful effort, and Nike did make some improvements, but 20 years later, I wanted to go back. I wanted to see what had happened to the workers. Had their lives really improved materially? And I met this young woman. Her name is Suparti. She makes 4 times more money than the people back in the village farming rice. We're growing much more food on much smaller amounts of land. It's one of humankind's most extraordinary achievements with great great benefit to the natural world. We use half as much land per person globally to provide our food. It's only possible for Supartie to live in the city as long as she doesn't need to make her own food, and we're making more food for more of us. In the countryside, when you're a poor farmer, you need a lot of kids to help you work on the farm. You need a lot of kids to help you in your retirement. In the city, you can invest more in fewer kids. And that trend is consistent around the world. As women become more powerful, more educated, as they have more income. Her grandmother had 13 children. Her mother had 6. And you can see it right here. We don't know what's going to happen next. There's one scenario where we keep going up, another scenario we go down. The high population estimate, the estimate where the world goes to 16 billion or more by the end of the century, is a world of low energy, wood, dung and charcoal, and large families, mostly in the countryside. A world where the population peaks at 8.5 billion and then declines by the end of this century is a world like Supartie is living. Higher energy, smaller families, more development, and more opportunity. This is Maisha. She is one of the 900 remaining mountain gorillas left in the world. She, as a baby, grew up in Africa's oldest national park in the Congo, called Virunga. In 2007, her parents and much of the rest of her group were killed by men making charcoal for energy. Since then, there's been well-meaning efforts to plant trees to help people in the region burn wood more efficiently, and the situation has only gotten worse. When we visited in December of last year, this is an aerial photo that we took high above the park. You can see here, illegal charcoal burning in the park. Why? Because people need it. Over 90% of the people depend on wood for fuel. We didn't save the whales by using whales more sustainably, by using whale oil more efficiently. We saved the whales by using a different kind of energy, by using a substitute. Supartie uses propane, what we use as camping fuel, similar to the natural gas that we all enjoy. It's an important substitute for the 3 billion people that still depend on wood and dung. As more of us move to the cities, we're going to consume more energy. For everybody to live at a moderate living standard, at basic material needs met, the world is going to need to triple and perhaps quadruple the amount of energy it produces from today. Propane is a fossil fuel. What are the clean energy options? There's not many. There's solar, there's wind, there's a little bit of geothermal, there's hydroelectric dams, and there's nuclear power plants. And solar and wind are wonderful. I've spent much of my professional career advocating for more solar, for more wind, including wind farm off the coast of Cape Cod. But solar and wind alone cannot power Shanghai at night. And there's a lot of exciting developments in batteries, but we are so far away from being able to power cities on batteries. Geothermal is great where it's available, and it's not available in many places. Hydroelectric dams have mostly been built in the rich world. We've mostly dammed our rivers, and even in places like China, many of the rivers have already been dammed. That means that we have to take a second look at nuclear power. When I was a boy, my aunt took me every August to Bittersweet Park, where we would remember the Hiroshima bombings. We would light candles and put them on paper boats. I saw a television movie about the aftermath of nuclear war. I was anti-nuclear my entire life.
1 million people dying right now or have died because of Chernobyl.
I found myself quite disappointed in myself and honestly quite angry at others who were propagating that myth.
More people have died from Chernobyl than in the Black Plague.
Fear is a really important emotion, but if we allow fear to drive us, we can end up making decisions that actually put us at greater risk.
What's so striking is just to go read the original World Health Organization documents and read the public health reports. It was a complete shock to me. I mean, I'm reading all the Chernobyl stuff, and I kind of am not believing it because it was so out of sync with what I had come to believe.
The biggest medical conspiracy and cover-up in the history of medicine, George.
In order to believe that 1 million people were killed by Chernobyl, which is what Greenpeace and Helen Caldicott, a number of other people claim, you have to believe there was a cover-up of just massive proportions by the World Health Organization, by the United Nations, by literally hundreds of the world's top public health experts.
Close down all those reactors now with solar and wind and geothermal. Forget about all the data and the figures and stuff. Listen to your intuition and you'll know what you've got to do.
And then I confronted this data and the challenge of meeting global energy and development needs and also dealing with one of our most serious environmental problems. And I've changed my mind.
On top of that rock, there must be 500 sea lions on top of that rock right now.
This is a nuclear power plant in California. You can see here all around it, natural life, sea life exists because nuclear power is zero pollution. And one of the things we've learned about energy production is that what you want from an environmental perspective is that you want the least natural resource in, the least amount of fuel in, the most amount of energy out, and the least amount of pollution and waste. You can't walk alongside a coal plant and not be affected by the smoke. You can with nuclear. How do humans save nature? Moving people out of their dependence on wood and agrarian poverty, moving away from large families to medium-sized families, access to modern energy so that forests are spared, so that forests can grow back from agriculture. The final step, moving towards small families, universal prosperity, and nuclear energy. Today we use half of the earth for nature. Can we leave 75% for nature? We're going to need more land for cities, but given current trends, higher energy, smaller families, more development, and more opportunity. We can drastically reduce how much of the earth we use for wood, crops, and meat production. Can we do it? I think we can. Why am I so confident? Because we've done it before.
Today, the case for nuclear is being made by environmentalists, engineers, scientists, and specifically climatologists.
I thought nuclear power was dumb.
And I was an anti-nuclear campaigner.
I found out that it is a zero-carbon power source. I thought the opposite. I was wrong.
I used to be strongly opposed to nuclear power.
I was appalled by it. Well, nuclear power was evil. I didn't want to go there.
I do have empathy for the people who disagree with me because I was that person.
As James Hansen says at NASA, the godfather of global warming, we've got to stop burning coal now. Germany's now decided that 80% of its energy is going to come from renewables shortly.
The people who argue for all renewables think that, well, if we can go from 0% to 10% to 20% renewable, then we're on the way and then it will get easier and we'll get 100%. Well, it's actually, if you look at the engineering, it's actually the opposite. When you get to 20 or 30%, then it gets harder, not easier, because of the intermittency of the renewables.
On the best day, they're doing pretty well midday, right? But on the worst day, in January, you got nothing. But this is what everybody forgets. As if the planet stops rotating, the clouds part, and Germany is baking in the sun, because the sun shines on Germany 24 hours a day. Tom Friedman the other day, New York Times, brought up Germany as an example, saying that Germany is 30% wind and solar. Most self-described environmentalists believe that that chunk is entirely wind and solar. Wind and solar.
When the media brands Germany's renewable program as one of solar and wind emitting biomass, that's not clarity. This is not the fault of solar and wind technology. They are very useful so long as we recognize and plan for their limitations. To fully harness intermittent power, we need both a smart grid and inexpensive energy storage. Today, we have neither, and I think it's very risky to presume we will get both. As we deploy renewables, increasingly, wind ends up losing to wind, and solar ends up losing to solar. They deliver energy, or fail to, at the same time. Germany still had to burn stuff to replace nuclear. In fact, the single largest energy source in the German renewable portfolio is biomass. This biomass is called a renewable resource because it's not a fossil fuel and ultimately comes from plants which can be regrown. However, it is not an environmentally friendly source of power, and it causes air pollution.
It's called global preventive medicine. The earth is the patient now, and we're all physicians to the patient.